The morning sun rose slowly over the valley of Elah, spreading a pale golden light across the dusty battlefield. Two great armies stood facing each other on opposite hills, the Philistines on one side, the Israelites on the other. Between them lay the quiet valley floor, wide and empty, like a stage waiting for a terrible drama to unfold. For 40 long days, the sound of mocking laughter had echoed through the valley. For 40 days, fear had ruled the hearts of men. Every single morning and every single evening, a giant stepped forward from the Philistine camp. His name was Goliath of Gath. He was unlike any man the Israelites had ever seen. Goliath stood over 9 feet tall, his body built like a mountain carved from muscle and stone. His bronze helmet flashed in the sunlight. A coat of heavy armor weighed him down like iron scales. On his back hung a massive javelin, and in his hand, he carried a spear so large that the head alone weighed more than most men's entire weapons. When he walked, the ground seemed to tremble under his feet. And when he spoke, the air itself shook. "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Choose a man and send him down to fight me. If he kills me, we will become your servants. But if I kill him, you will serve us." Then Goliath would roar with laughter and add, "I defy the armies of Israel this day." Each time he shouted these words, terror froze the Israelite camp. Even the bravest warriors trembled. Soldiers who had fought many battles suddenly felt like frightened children again. And at the head of Israel stood King Saul, tall, strong, and once fearless. But now even he was afraid. For 40 days, no soldier dared to step forward. Not one. Far from the battlefield, beyond the dust and clamor of war, a young shepherd named David was watching his father's sheep in the quiet hills of Bethlehem. David was the youngest of 8 sons. To his brothers, he was just a boy too small, too young, too inexperienced to matter in serious things like war. While his older brothers followed King Saul into battle, David stayed behind to guard sheep. But what David lacked in size, he made up for in faith, courage, and a heart that burned for God. At night, under the wide-open sky, David played his harp and sang songs of praise. He had faced lions and bears in lonely valleys and had learned that God was stronger than any beast on earth. One morning, their father Jesse called David and said, "Take this food to your brothers at the battlefield. Find out how they are doing, and bring back news of them." David obeyed immediately. He rose early, left the sheep with another shepherd, and traveled toward the valley of Elah. As he approached the camp, he heard shouts, clashing weapons, and the noise of armies preparing for battle. David ran toward the front lines, eager to see his brothers. Just as David arrived, Goliath stepped forward once again. The giant's shadow stretched long across the valley. His voice boomed like thunder. "Choose a man to fight me. Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul?" The Israelite soldiers shrank back in fear. David stood frozen. He could not believe what he was seeing. This enormous man was mocking the army of the living God, and no one was answering him. David turned to the soldiers beside him and asked, "What will be done for the man who defeats this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" The men told him, "The king will give him great riches, his daughter in marriage, and his father's family will be free from taxes." But David was not thinking of rewards. He said with fire in his voice, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His words spread through the camp, reaching the ears of King Saul. Soon, David was summoned to the royal tent. David stood before Saul, still dusty from the fields, still smelling of sheep and wilderness. Compared to the tall, armored king, David looked like a child. Yet his eyes burned with confidence. David said to the king, "Let no one lose heart because of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul stared at him in disbelief. "You are not able to fight this man," Saul replied. "You are only a boy, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David began to speak of the battles no one else had seen. He told Saul, "While I was tending my father's sheep, a lion came and carried off one of the lambs. I went after it, struck it, and rescued the lamb from its mouth. When it turned on me, I caught it by its beard and struck it down. I have killed both lion and bear. This Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God." Then David declared words that would echo through history. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." There was a long silence. Finally, Saul said softly, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Saul ordered his servants to dress David in royal armor. They placed a heavy bronze helmet on his head. They strapped a sword at his side. They draped armor across his chest. David took a few steps. Then he stopped. The armor was too heavy. The sword dragged along the ground. He could barely move. "I cannot go in these," David said. "I am not used to them." And so David removed the king's armor. Instead, he took what he knew best. He picked up his wooden staff. He selected 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. He placed them in his shepherd's bag. And in his hand, he held only a simple sling, a weapon of the fields. That was all. No armor. No sword. No shield. Just faith. As David walked toward the valley, the Philistine champion saw him approaching. And Goliath laughed. He saw a boy young, unarmored, carrying no sword. To him, David looked like an insult. "Am I a dog," Goliath roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" Then the giant cursed David by his gods and thundered, "Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." The Philistine army roared with approval. The Israelite soldiers trembled. But David did not flinch. He stepped forward and lifted his voice so that every soldier on both hills could hear him. "You come to me with sword and spear and javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." His voice grew stronger. "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. It is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's." The valley fell silent. Goliath lowered his spear and began to move toward David with slow, confident steps. David reached into his bag. His fingers closed around a smooth stone. He placed it in the sling. As Goliath charged forward, raising his spear, David ran toward him. The sling spun once, twice, 3 times. Then David released the stone. The stone cut through the air like a bolt of lightning. It struck Goliath directly on the forehead, the only place not protected by armor. The force was so powerful that the stone sank into the giant's skull. Goliath's eyes went wide. The earth shook. The giant staggered. And then, the impossible happened. The mighty Philistine warrior collapsed face down into the dust. Silence. For a breathless second, no one moved. Then the Israelite camp erupted in thunderous shouting. David ran forward, stood over the fallen enemy, took the giant's own sword, and cut off his head to prove that the terror was truly dead. When the Philistine army saw their champion defeated, panic seized them. They turned and fled. The Israelites surged forward with renewed courage, chasing them down through the valley and beyond the city gates. What had begun as a day of fear became a day of victory. Songs would later be sung of that moment. Children would grow up hearing the name David. A shepherd boy had faced a giant and won. From that day on, David's life changed. Saul brought him into the royal court. The people loved him. Women danced and sang. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. At first, Saul was proud. But pride slowly turned into jealousy. Jealousy turned into hatred. Saul began to fear David not because David was a threat to the kingdom, but because God's favor was clearly upon him. And thus began the long road of trials that would shape David into a king. But that is another story. The story of David and Goliath was about faith confronting fear, courage standing against terror, God using the small to defeat the mighty, trust in God when all odds say run. David did not win because he was strong. David won because he believed God was stronger. And that same faith still moves mountains today.